How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, where today we are once again revisiting a Dark Souls game where we're going to beat it with optimized DPS. Thanks to Spectrum122 for this video idea. I did put out a poll question asking what people wanted to see, and the number one response was Demon Souls with mathematically optimized DPS, which I totally intend to do at some point, but these videos take a little bit of work to do. And with his idea and the Elden Ring DLC fast approaching, I figured why not go back to the game that really started to blow my channel up. In the past couple of months, I've grown quite a bit, and I think a lot of that was due in part to that first video. So that being said, let's jump into it. This is also going to be my first Soul Level 1 run, so it was very interesting to route it and figure out what the best weapons were. I had heard about a couple of things, like the blacksmith giant hammer being one of the better weapons, but as you'll see, we don't actually ever use that in this run. So before we get into the run, the key component is actually discussing the damage formula. You'll notice that if you're watching either the Dark Souls 3 or Dark Souls 1 videos that I have done prior to this, that this formula is actually a little bit different. It's pretty close in some areas, but some of the numbers are slightly updated. Somebody alerted me that the actual damage formula had been data mined. I'm kind of taking that at face value. I didn't go through and test every single hit, but it seems to be that this is the actual damage formula, or very, very close to it. Effectively, there are 5 tiers of damage based on the attack to defense ratio between you and the boss or enemy that you are facing off on. Generally speaking, for this video, we're going to be sitting in those 3rd and 4th tiers, where our attack divided by defense is going to be between 1 and 8. So those formulas down there, they kind of control how much damage we do per hit. And then similarly to the original video I did, I already had a lot of the data in terms of how quickly attacks were in terms of frames, which is where we're getting the per second portion of the DPS formula. So I didn't have to go through and recalculate all those. If you want, you should check the video description. I have my spreadsheet on a Google Sheet file this time, where if you want to do this, you can go through and actually plug in your stats. Right now, I just have the weapons that are available for Soul Level 1 characters. I am working on implementing every single weapon in the game, as well as all of the infusions, which actually is not too difficult. It's just a pretty lengthy process, and I'm doing that in part for an upcoming video that I might be able to get at before the DLC drops, although I am actually going on vacation on the Saturday that it comes out, so that's going to be a lot of my vacation time. Anyways, these are fairly complicated formulas, but it's pretty linear if you actually go through and graph it out, so it's not a huge thing to understand these. Just know that some of the numbers, that's where they're coming from. The first thing that we do, of course, is we have to go through the Asylum, and there's really only one weapon that we can use in the Asylum, that being the hand axe, because Pyromancer is the only Soul Level 1 character, and luckily enough for us, he does start with the Pyromancy Flame, so that means after we kill the Asylum Demon, which you can see the graphic on screen, and this time I'm going to be including the time to kill per boss, so you can kind of look at how quickly we're able to chunk down these bosses. But the Pyromancy Flame, of course, is going to be an integral part of our run-through, as we're going to have to go through and pick up some early items. So the first 2 items that we're going to have to pick up are obvious to any Souls veteran, that being the Red Tearstone Ring, which is a 50% attack multiplier, and Power Within, which is a 40% damage multiplier. The difference between an attack and damage multiplier: the attack multiplier first changes the variable that's used in the damage calculation formula. And due to the way that the damage formula works in this game, a 50% attack multiplier is always going to result in more than 50% additional damage, generally speaking, because the attack portion is in the numerator of that formula twice, at least for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th tiers of the damage calculation formula, whereas a damage multiplier, it takes whatever value you get after using that formula to determine damage, and then multiplies the end result by 40%. Anyways, the other item that we had to pick up this early is the Enchanted Ember, and we're going to have to go and farm some blue chunks and green Titanite shards, both from the crystal golems and leeches down in Blighttown. But thanks to Rickhart being available from the get-go and us being able to get a Ember, which allows weapon ascension all the way up to a plus 15, although we can't get a slab this early, equivalent weapon, we're able to grind for those materials and get our hand axe all the way up to a plus 4 enchanted hand axe before we even face off against our second boss. So our first kind of real boss in this run is going to be the Capper Demon, and this is going to be the only fight in the game where we're actually going to make use of armor. The stone armor provides you pretty good defense and excellent poise, which helps mitigate the dogs. So even with us being at low health, the combination of the stone armor and the blue tearstone ring, which we also acquired, allows us to face take a couple of hits and take the Capper Demon down in about 13 seconds. DPS, it's pretty good, 687. That's on the high side, but we're going to really crank that when we get to some mid and late game bosses. With the Capper Demon down, we can head into the depths for 3 reasons. The first, we want to go ahead and free Laurentius for a purchase in just a moment. We want to grab the large ember from behind the butcher, and we also want to get cursed so that the HP drain from Power Within is a little bit mitigated. But this is going to come into play a little bit more importantly later whenever we can pick up the Sanctus from the Paladin Leroy invasion. Anyways, on to our next boss. It's going to be Chaos Witch Quelaag. And you can tell here that, it's a pretty quick fight. Our DPS is below 500, still really good. But thanks to Quelaag having pretty good defenses, and the only option for us at this stage for a high-level weapon is the Enchanted Path. And of course, we basically have no scaling bonuses thanks to the way enchanted weapons work. It's not nearly as strong as some of the upcoming fights. Still a relatively quick fight, and we can ring our first Bell of Awakening. Once Quelaag's down, we continue into the Demon Ruins to face off against Ceaseless Discharge. We do have to go ahead and purchase a Battle Axe, regrind for upgrade materials to get ourselves a plus 4 Enchanted Battle Axe, which technically has the highest DPS at this point in the game, although if you're using this as kind of a guideline, there's really not any reason to do this, thanks to the way that Ceaseless Discharge fight mechanics work. Any 6 hits are going to make him die if you can get him to hang off the ledge. Anyways, this is the lowest DPS that we're actually able to achieve in this run. I don't have a boss time for this fight, just again, thanks to the way that the mechanics work, but it was pretty long, although not the longest. We still continue further down into the Demon Ruins. We go by and pick up the large Flame Ember near the burrowing rockworms. We go ahead and purchase a Purging Stone so that we're able to reverse our curse. Buy Flash Sweat from Laurentius, and go down into Ash Lake to get the Dragon Greatsword, which gives us an additional 200 points of fire defense whenever it's equipped. With all of these in hand, as well as the gold hem set, we are actually able to make a quick jump into the lava and pick up the Chaos Flame Ember before we even get the orange charred ring. Now that we have both of these embers, we can make the harrowing journey down into the catacombs and talk to Vamos, get another copy of a hand axe all the way up to a plus 1 chaos, and go and face off against the gargoyles. We could potentially get a plus 2 or even higher with some good luck from the crystal lizards in the Great Hollow, but I wanted to save them for some possible slabs just in case I needed it for a few more copies of whatever weapon in the future if we need to ascend some more stuff to crystal. Anyways, the gargoyles, a very easy fight, the highest DPS that we're able to achieve in this run, and we're able to open the gates to Sen's Fortress. Before we face off against the Iron Golem, we need to go ahead and purchase a reinforced club, get a slab from the Great Hollow. If you saw my last video, you know that these are pretty easy to get if you just use some save backups. We have to go ahead and kill Ingward for the key to the seal and ascend our reinforced club all the way up to a plus 15 with Andre. Again, this fight really no issue. Don't actually get him to fall off the ledge, which I was hoping for, as I fought him near the narrow portion of his arena, but a easy fight altogether. Now, this upcoming fight against Ornstein and Smo was not the most attempts that I had on any boss in this run, but it was certainly the most difficult. The primary reason is that thanks to the Sanctus being locked behind us placing the Lordvessel, We have to bait out the dash from Ornstein, do a 3-hit combo, get him to stagger, wait for our stamina to tick back above the stage where we can land 2 more consecutive hits on him, basically one cycling him in just a couple of seconds. And that's all in favor of being at a high enough HP in order to take down Smo in the second phase. You'll see that in this fight, I almost died at the very end. With the Lordvessel place, that opens up the back half of the game, and we're going to use this to great effect. First step, we go ahead and enter the Daughters of Chaos, get up to +2, and this allows us to have easy access to a red Titanite chunk farm in Lost Izalith, and we can also grab the red Titanite slab from that area, which, fun fact, is one of the only guaranteed red Titanite slabs in the game. You can also trade an Ascended +0 Pyromancy Flame with Snuggly in the Asylum, but we can't do that in this run because we cannot acquire the second Pyromancy Flame from Agi, because in order to get that, you actually have to have an intelligence of 11 or higher, and unfortunately the Pyromancy starts with 10 intelligence. While we were down in Lost Izalith, I decided to go ahead and kill the Bed of Chaos. Pretty much every hit is going to one-shot the Bed of Chaos, so there's not really any point in optimizing for that fight. But we do want to go ahead and go down into the Tomb of Giants to get our last upgrade. First, of course, we have to go ahead and face off against Pinwheel, which was an absolute joke of the fight. Took me less than 6 seconds overall, which was the quickest fight in the entire game. Before we get the Sanctus, we also grab the Skull Lantern so we can trade that for the Ring of Fog, and grab the Sanctus from the Paladin Leroy invasion. Again, if you watched the original DPS run, you'll know that thanks to the level of HP that we're at, if we are cursed and we are using the Ring of Dusk, if you use Power Within and have the Sanctus, the HP drain and HP regeneration actually equal out. So as long as you're above, I think, 3 HP entering into the fight, or whenever both of them are active, you will never die. And with our newfound +5 Chaos Hand Axe, we use that against Pinwheel as well, but we go on to face off against Seath, the second of the Lord Soul holders. This was a relatively long fight just because we have to go and run around him and break the crystal in the back part of his arena every time. Still less than 40 seconds overall to kill Seath, who has a ton of HP. Before doing the DLC, I wanted to take down all of the base game bosses with the exception of Gwyn, or at least the mandatory base game bosses. So Sif was next, and Sif likes to jump around quite a bit, so I actually missed a couple of swings here and there. Luckily, thanks to the size of the hand axe, the stumble animation that you get whenever you miss a swing isn't too catastrophic, and this was a pretty easy fight. With the Covenant of Artorias in hand, our next fight is the Four Kings, and this was the fight that I was most concerned about in the base game, just due to the fact that they have such a high HP pool. You'll notice that for this fight, I actually have 2 different DPS calculations, and that's because this is one of the 2 fights in the entire game that took me longer than 60 seconds, which is the length of the Power Within duration. So I threw on a calculation for both with and without Power Within. Either way, the Chaos Hand Axe +5 is the strongest weapon regardless of whether or not you are using Power Within. This one was the longest fight in the game that took, time by regular means. The only other longer one was the Nito fight, and that's just thanks to some of the fight mechanics where, I used the Ring of Fog, which you'll see in just a moment. Speaking of, we go back to the Asylum so that we can pick up the Ring of Fog by trading a Skull Lantern, which will allow us to not aggro the skeletons if we just kind of stay near the opening arena. This was actually the fight that took me the longest, at a little bit over 3 minutes in total, about 200 seconds. Although once we actually started the fight, if you will, once we popped Power Within, it was pretty quick, and I think it was actually the quickest of the 3 Lord Soul fights, the Bed of Chaos notwithstanding. So all of the mandatory base game bosses out of the way, we'll head into the DLC. First up is the Sanctuary Guardian. This is where we're going to switch back to the regular weapon upgrade paths, this time using the Crystal Hand Axe with Gold Pine Resin. Ironically enough, we are using Gold Pine Resin, even though the elemental defense of the Sanctuary Guardian for Lightning specifically, I think, is the second highest or third highest in the game, behind Gwyn and maybe Ornstein. Just due to the way that damage calculation is done in the game, it actually ends up being a touch stronger than using Great Magic Weapon with the Ulasil Catalyst. I mentioned earlier that the Ornstein and Smo fight did not take me the most number of attempts. Well, our next boss is. Yes, Knight Artorias took me, I think, well over 50 attempts maybe to do in total. And the reason I find him so difficult, especially at soul level 1, is he is so quick. You know, humanoid enemies are often some of the toughest in the soul series. I mean, just look at Melania, for example, in Elden Ring. But at least for some of the bigger bosses, especially in Dark Souls 1, where they have a lot of slower, relatively speaking, attacks, it's a little bit easier to dodge. Well, Artorias, you know, he is just incredibly quick. I think this fight, again, took me 50 or more tries in total. It was a good fight in the end. I did get some luck here and there. But yeah, this one took me a long time. Just the three big boys left, Calamite, Manus, and Gwyn, and we'll fight them in that order. Calamite, ironically enough, was the kind of late game boss that I was least worried about, just because I have fought him so many times, primarily in an effort to get his tail cut weapon. I'm so used to dodging some of his attacks, especially the ones where he kind of does his right foot slam and then back foot slam. You know, you can read those pretty easily. The real one that you have to watch out for, especially in this fight, is if you're hanging underneath his body, where he does the forward flying attack, the turn around, and then dragon breath attack. That's the one that can really catch you off guard if you're not paying attention. And I think that was the attack that killed me the most out of all the times that I fought Calamite. Still, this fight only took me about 10 tries, which I was really, really happy about. I mentioned that this was my first ever soul level 1 run in any of the games, and this next fight against Manus was the one that I was most terrified coming into this run. I've fought Manus a number of times before, but what I often do is either face tank him with some super heavy armor, or I'll, cheese him from outside the boss fog with bows and arrows, as I never really got into a good rhythm fighting against him. Well, this run totally forced me to learn his patterns, and actually what I noticed, especially when you're using a weapon like the hand axe, is that whenever he does an attack, he has quite a big opening for you to get some hits in. He also has a tendency to jump away after he finishes his attack animation, so specifically with the hand axe, you can sometimes get 3 hits off on him, and when you're in hyper mode like I am, rocking a DPS around 570, it goes by pretty quick. The whole fight took me less than a minute, in fact. Finally, we come to the end of the run, and we face off against Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. Again, similar to the first time I fought him in the optimized DPS run. You know I've got to hit him with the parry and riposts, because to me, that is the way that you're supposed to fight him. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this run. It was very interesting to do. Again, the first time that I've ever done a soul level 1 run. I must have died over 150, 200 times. I didn't actually keep track, but it was quite a number. A lot of them were early in the fights, especially against some of the late game bosses. Again, if you're interested, I do have in the description of this video a link to the spreadsheet that I built for a soul level 1 optimized DPS weapon calculator thingy. Again, I'm hoping to have that type of spreadsheet updated to have every weapon type in the game at some point for an upcoming video. Hopefully I can get that out before the Elden Ring DLC, but if not, it shouldn't be too long afterwards, maybe sometime late June, early July. Anyways, again, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like, comment, or a subscription. Thank you to everybody that has done so over the past couple of months. It's been insane. Coming into this year, I was hoping for around 2,000 subscribers maybe, and I'm up close to 6,000 already, which is absolutely nuts. Again, thank you so much for watching these videos. They've been fun to make. They do take quite a bit of effort, but I'm glad to see that people enjoy them as much as I do making them. So long for now. Hopefully the Elden Ring DLC is as good as everybody hopes it is. I'll be sure to have a couple of videos on that in the near future as well. Until then, thanks for watching.